Warning: the information given during this podcast is from professionals discussing situations from our experience and sharing knowledge.
We are not treating or diagnosing what you are personally experiencing, and if you are having difficulties, please seek professional help.
Hello, and welcome to
It's Not You,
It's Them.
This series is about getting started
All you need to know about finding, working,
and finishing up with a therapist.
Hello, so I'm Rich,
I am Lauren.
and this week's episode is How Many Flavours? So last time we talked a little bit about how to start you off thinking about what it is you can look for, and then I think today we're going to speak more about like not only finding a therapist is important, but like there are so many different types underneath that, what makes an experience happen, and I think
Yes.
it'd be worth clearing that up. Do you think?
I think there's so much. There's so many acronyms. It's kind of death by acronym sometimes. I think.
Yeah.
When you're trying to look for something, you're already distressed, you're already overwhelmed, you're already kind of vulnerable, and then what do you want? Like, I do this on Psychology Today or anything where you look up mental health, you just get flooded with all of these different things, and it's overwhelming. Yeah, so I think we were trying to just clarify
break it down a little bit. Yeah. So I think we'll start breaking some of them, like the most popular ones that people will see popping up. First off, there's one that's called psychodynamic. So psychodynamic, that is your traditional Freud type therapy. It's very long-term therapy. It's not short-term. We're talking months and months and months. It's very good into from the very beginning, right the way through. And the old style of psychodynamic was very, very much they didn't react much to what you were saying. They would just take on board what you were saying, and it's almost like having a blank canvas project stuff to you, and they'll make notes and that sort of thing. Obviously, it might have modernized itself a bit now. I'm not completely 100% with it, but this is kind of like the idea of it. So it's very somebody who's not going to be that interactive with you. You're talking very long time, so it's like they're going to take their time, and it's everything, every stage of your life that you've been through, that you're going through everything.
Yes.
It's, if you had to describe the type of person that would be suitable for, I don't know, like is somebody who's got plenty of time or feel like they've got a lot of, what would you say? Like for psychodynamic, I don't know. It's sort of like, who would it suit?
I think if you're aware that you've had long-term trauma or like long-term, I'm aware that there was this one time when I was 8, or I'm aware that, I had a bad relationship with my parents, it can be quite useful to re-walk that path and see, okay, I am holding on to that, or I haven't let that go, or I haven't been able to process that. But also if you want to do most of the work, right? Like, clients should be doing their own work anyway, right? Therapists should not be working harder than their clients. But I think if you want the experience and you want to own that experience with little direction, then I think that might be more appropriate for you.
Yeah, I agree with that one for sure. We've got, so for within the other, like the three main ones are psychodynamic, humanistic, and CBT. Now within humanistic, we've got some different ones. So like we've got person-centered, which is like Carl Rogers, which is, you can explain a bit more about that in your domain.
Is my jam, yes. Person-centered therapy primarily believes that the client has all the answers, they just have to get out of their own way, right? That's kind of like person-centered therapy in one sentence. The therapist does not give advice, they do not direct you in any way. There's a lot of self-reflection, there's a lot of paraphrasing of what you said and kind of helping you let go of some of those restrictive thought patterns and stuff you might have around yourself, and actually realizing, no, you do know what you want to do. It's just having that ally, that strong, unconditional relationship that does not change based on what you think, feel, or act. So I think that can be really beneficial for people that have quite destructive relationships or dysfunctional families, to have that one person that you can go to that holds you, like not physically, they should not be touching you, just to clarify that, but mentally and emotionally holds you. You can say anything you need to say. it's not ever judged, and you're still valued and valid as a result. And that can be really powerful if you've been stuck in that way. So that's person-centered therapy. And then your bag is Gestalt.
My Gestalt is, I have to say, it's one of the most interesting models for me personally. I mean, like the way it's brought together, it's a mixture of a lot of different things together, but it's more around again, it's similar to like person-centered, like the person has the knowledge, but it's more focused on like it's whatever's bothering you in the moment. That's what it says to focus on, because it's about the whole bodily sensations. It's about get out of your head into your senses is a big thing about that. There's a lot of segue into different types of creative, like they call it creative experiments, but different like third-party things like paints, dreams, that sort of thing. I think because the focus is to access more than just chatting away. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I know other therapies have that side of it as well, but it relies quite heavily in it, I think, which I always found quite interesting, because it's amazing being able to even like through like you can weave dance therapy through it as well. It's just an interesting way to like turn it on its head a little bit, just to step outside just for a second, and maybe that little shift can like illuminate something. Because I find it's very much like Gestalt is checking your blind spots, essentially. You know, like this is like you're describing this. This is what it's about. Are you thinking about this? Have you noticed this is popping up as well when you're saying that? It's very like sensations and noticing all them bits and pieces, and I think that's kind of. So I think like who I think would be suitable for it. Like I do think it appeals to a lot of like younger people. Like younger people would be quite helpful, or if you just. I suppose if you sometimes find it difficult just talking about it, because you can explore it through sensation first, and then bring it back around that way. And I think it's very. Yeah, I think that's kind of like it's almost like a disruptor. It's like it's a little bit of a disruptive thing, because you can be a bit more challenging. It's like a bit more not challenging is the wrong word, but like it's a bit more. Not there's nowhere to hide. I don't want to say that. It's just almost like if you want your finances, you know, it allows it to bring it up. But that's part of it. CBT. However,
so cognitive behavioural therapy is evidence-based. It's one that the NHS system likes to trot out a lot. And CBT can be useful if you know you have like one specific issue. So it really hones in and kind of moves a lot of the stuff out of the way. It's quite an active therapy in terms of self-led with the client doing the majority of the work. It is quite structured. So you're not really going to go, quote unquote, off topic and end up in some deep-seated trauma you never address. But the CBT is if you know, okay, I keep doing this thing, I can't get past my anxiety, I can't do this, then it can clear quite quickly, if you're willing to attack it, those issues. So CBT is very short-term. It's not a long investment. You're looking maybe 6, 9, 12 weeks maximum for a course of CBT. Some charities in the UK do it via the phone, which has its benefits and not, right? If you, some of them will give out therapy packets, kind of what we call bibliotherapy. So you just get the packets in the mail and you do the work and then you send it back and blah, blah, blah. Again, it's self-led, it requires self-motivation. And I think the benefits of it is very specific, like I said, so you can't fall into the crevasses.
The pitfall,
Yeah, but that can also be minimizing as well. So like there's pros and cons to all of them. But CBT is also very cognitive, like it says cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's reworking what you're telling yourself about something that's happening to you. So it's not so much feelings based. It's a lot more kind of what I call from the neck up, right? You're in that head.
Logic.
You're in that logic space. No one gets to be anywhere near your feelings, which is why I think British people respond so well to CBT.
It's true. Because there's an element of homework to it as well, and there is a high proportion of like, there's quite a lot of men who respond better to it than traditional therapies. So like, and that makes sense. What we were just talking about makes sense. Yeah. So they're the kind of like key corner bits that we have around general therapy. Other things that are like that maybe are not so familiar. So we've got life coaches that pop up.
Yes.
Not therapists in the traditional sense, but they are because they're giving you more advice. It's more about like goal setting and structure and that sort of thing. I mean, I do think it plays a valuable part, but it's very different to going through trauma. Yeah, going through like trauma and stuff. This is about like aspirational. I would almost put like where do you want to see yourself, what you want to be, like what's your practical blocks in the way of doing that. I would say that's more life coaching.
Yeah, and I think with life coaching, especially in the influencer times that we're in, I think a lot of it boils down to like mentorship. Like a lot of young people don't know what the heck they're supposed to be doing, who the hell they are. Mm-hmm. So I think having this, or even people that stuck, like I need to switch careers and I don't know where to go and I'm not happy and my marriage is failing and my kids are annoying. Like, so all of this, that life coaches kind of can help mentor you, that peer related issues that you can get out of your stuckness, right? And you're right with the terms that they're not necessarily they're not clinicians like we are in a clinical sense, but I do know they put a lot of time and effort into that training. Absolutely. So I think, like you said, it has its benefits. I think, especially in this society at the moment with influencer as everything, but be mindful that it is not clinical therapy.
Yeah. I mean, you also get like life coaching that goes on in the corporate world. There's like corporate coaching, that sort of stuff. So like it's worth like pointing that bit out. Now turning it around quite slightly to the things like, I've heard some acronyms. Can you break it down for us? What is DBT and what is ACT? Okay, there's two different ones.
DBT is called dialectical behavior therapy. Now again, it's a spin-off from CBT. It's from the same world as that cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah. It is evidence-based psychotherapy is what it's kind of coined as. And it's used primarily to treat personality disorders and kind of interpersonal conflicts. So a lot of people with borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, do well with DBT because it can help them structure why they're not getting along with people. Right? You can't help build in empathy. Empathy is a skill. It's something you're taught from a very early age. And if you don't learn it and it doesn't become that cost benefit for you, you don't ever learn it. And that's where the personality disorders come into play. It also can be useful for like mood disorders and suicidal ideation. So again, you're targeting mood regulation, thought processes. And again, it's short term. It can help people with really strong, intense emotions reframe and sort of refocus of what they're supposed to be doing. So it's a little bit more intense than CBT, and it does require a trained DBT person. If someone can't just say, "Oh, we're going to use DBT skills." No, there should be a dialectical behavioral therapy clinician.
And would they have a specific certification? Like, would they have a letters after then? Like, how would you know? If someone said, like, "Oh, I could do DBT," and you can do, how would you know the difference between the two?
It should say DBTT, like dialectical behavioral therapist or professional. They should have a little watermark thing that goes against their name or on their website or wherever. Again, if you know your personality is an issue, if you're having interpersonal conflicts, the common denominator unfortunately is you, then seeking out something like CBT or DBT is great. Now ACT, on the other hand, is acceptance commitment therapy. Now ACT, there's a great book by Russell Harris called The Happiness Trap, which is a really great resource if you're looking for self-help in terms of ACT. ACT helps you understand your current situation, and it's a lot of self-acceptance, love, validation of your own experience. It's great for people with chronic pain. I personally did it myself. It's great for people who have had kind of lifelong depression, lifelong kind of poor self-concept, what they think about themselves, they've got low self-worth. ACT can be really great in terms of, I am valid, I am okay, things are going to be all right. And it's a really nice way, it's more gentle than the other two, than CBT and DBT. ACT is more, it's not just from the neck up, you're starting to stray into, what do you think and feel about yourself? Like how are your thoughts actively hurting you? You know, where does that, whose voice is it that's telling you you're not good enough? So being able to kind of it's like spring cleaning for your emotional storage. But it's like I said, it's a lot more gentle. So still self-motivated, but it's a lot more about telling yourself, is it true, is it necessary, is it kind? Like, you're telling yourself you're a worthless POS. Is that really necessary? That's not really kind.
Yeah, exactly. So are there like ones that I've seen bandied about, or is things like, oh, I'm an integrated therapist, which is integrated, which means you it's like, it is a thing, but you pick you're training multiple bits from different parts of the
bag of tricks.
Yeah, bag of tricks. So it's that's integrated. Transpersonal is more like a spiritual.
Oh yeah.
Sort of like dimensional sort of things. The transpersonal therapist is more spiritual, from what I know of it. Which is different to, like, you got your healers, so you got Reiki healers, and you got things like that, which is a different bag altogether. But we're talking about, this is like transpersonal. So if you want very spiritual stuff, but going from that, it does nicely lead us into that you also have counsellors or therapists who belong to certain religions as well. So like you're like priests and vicars and imams and all a spiritual leader within your community could also be a therapist. And I think it's also important to like explain a bit more about how the expectation might be slightly different.
Yes, I think that's really key. I think a lot of spiritual leaders have a lot more influence than clinical practitioners, right? Like the beauty of clinical therapy is you don't know us. We're completely outside of your family, your realm, your world. You're never going to bump into us, like, and that's where the beauty is that you're a complete stranger. But I think the influence that a spiritual leader can have on your life and your family gets a little bit sticky at times, but I think it also has huge value. Again, it's more like one of those, if you're gonna do it, you need to know what you're letting yourself in for.
Yeah, of course. And I think there's from my understanding, I'll start with that. From my understanding, obviously it'll be will be led by their own compass, plus with the faith that they're part of. Do you mean that'll be what they discuss it about and base it on? Whereas for therapists, we've got a dedicated, very similar. We've got a code that we all sign up to, and this is what we do and preach to it. So it's like knowing what that code book looks like and what certain things are. For therapists, you should always feel comfortable and accepted and welcomed, Whereas I think in spiritual things, there'll be certain things that will...
As a different set of rules.
Different set of rules. And I think I'm trying to diplomatically bring up the idea. I don't want to say that any spiritual counsellor is bad. I don't want to say that as a generalisation at all. I think they do some really good work. What I do want to highlight is also this has been the sticking point in terms, especially in the UK, around conversion therapy. There's been a small population of therapists who have signed up to this thing, and like some spiritual leaders who signed up to it, where they obviously don't believe in transgender people, they also don't believe in gay people, and they will have a certain
point of view
that solution point of view, and it is led definitely historically is led people on a path of thinking that they can correct themselves, and that is something that needs to be corrected, and they'll have a family in their community, like a family in the community, who are supporting that belief as well. So it can be incredibly difficult to deal with. It exists. It has definitely has existed in a big part of things. I still think it exists today, maybe not in the same numbers, or maybe not as visible as it once was. But I think it's problematic, and I do think it's worth mentioning, because if you're going to a therapy session, whoever the therapist is, if the person's coming away feeling worse and worse and worse about themselves, then I don't think that therapy
That's not therapy.
That's not therapy.
No. And I love how you are tiptoeing around the fact that you don't want to say that conversion therapy is a crock of shit, right? Because
Yeah,
I will say that for you, because I'm watching you turn yourself inside out at the moment. But like, conversion therapy has no place in clinical practice. It has no place. When you're actively telling a client that who they are, the fabric of who they are, is not valid and it is not real. And if they want to be an accepted member of the community, then they must change the ultimate being of who they are. Then that's absolutely no place in therapy to community. And it is banned. It should be banned, and there should be no clinical practitioners that are engaging in conversion therapy.
It's definitely to be banned in the UK. I think Ireland banned it.
Yeah. Northern Ireland
banned it. One of them have banned it. It's going to be banned in this country. There's been a pledge to it. They're making progress towards it. The counselling professional bodies have banned it. So anybody who is practicing against this code of ethics, you'll be taken off the register straight away. There's no question. They've always signed this unified statement saying it's a self-regulated thing. We're all agreeing to this. So legally, it's got a little way to go, but professionally, that's what the standard is. It shouldn't be happening.
In some states over here in America, it is. In others, that's the hardest part about American, is the difference between state and federal. Is you've got some states that are absolutely against it. They see the damaging after effects it have on people, the high rate of suicide after a result of conversion therapy, all those things that go into making it a horrible practice. And then you have some states that think it's right because they have that conflict of spiritual, religious guidelines versus what they believe. It's really hard to navigate. But if you are an LGBTQIA plus person, if you are somebody that struggles with identity, do not go to see somebody that does conversion therapy. That it's not valid. You are valid as a human being, and you deserve to be here in whatever capacity you choose to be here in.
Yeah. I think there's also worth mentioning, like, with stories that I've heard before in the past, it has been a case of like, my previous experience of therapy was my parents set it up with like the spiritual leader or whatever it is, they set it up, and it's been a conversation. So that person's experience of counselling has not been what I'm saying is confidential. Well, it's not positive. What I'm saying is confidential, and it's also like, it's not, because obviously it's getting back to the parents, it's that sort of thing. So it's not that isn't counselling, whatever that is. If you've got somebody who's signing up to something and it's sharing it, that's not counselling. Well, at least not in the UK. So this leads us on to young people and children in therapy settings. Because when you told me this in America, how different it is, I was a bit. I felt something.
And my experience, again, we're speaking from our experience. We're not categorizing or generalizing. We're just sort of talking from our experience. So I was a school counsellor for a few years in the American school system. And children have the right to privacy, but they do not have the right to confidentiality. So if I have a young person, particularly in a school setting, that was talking to me about something, even if it was a claim of abuse or whatever, obviously as a mandatory reporter, he would report that. But the parent has a right to ask specifically what happened in that session. And being English, right, and not American, I did not necessarily agree with that. So spent many a time in the principal's office being almost forced to give up what had been said in that session, whilst not really selling the kid up the river and all that sort of, and eventually it led me to leave that particular track of my profession. But I don't agree with that. I think parents have a right to know what's happening in their child's life, and if there was something that was going on that I felt the child was at risk of immediate harm and the parent could do something about it, then absolutely. You know, I'm not withholding information.
Yeah.
But if the kid's telling me some deep-seated issue that really has nothing to do with their immediate safety, I don't feel that I need to rat the kid out. Like, it's not about keeping secrets, but any child, young person, even all the way up to 18, if they're a young adult, should have the right to come to somebody and say, I'm not okay, you know, or I'm not okay in my relationship with my parents, or I'm not okay in my relationship with my teachers or schoolmates or whatever. And I think it also makes it difficult in this country because of school shootings and the level of violence that those kind of situations have led to. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's always that, unfortunately, there's a running theme about terming a kid, or that's the next school shooter.
Yeah.
In school counselling communities, like, that kid gave the school shooter vibes. Like, you know, and that's where I think that the rather right to privacy but not confidentiality comes in more of a heavy-handed element, I think, than the UK.
Yeah, because like in the UK it's very different here, because the thing applies to all clients, is that as long as there's no harm to yourself or others, which you would break confidentiality, that you do that for the kids. Because I worked at young people's thing in the charity there, and like she said, you will get parents who will ask you what you've talked about, and you just have to say they've made progress. That's it. Because they're not entitled to the content of the session, because that could be, as you said before, that's their place to sound it out, but that's the professional guidelines that we've got over here. So that's why it was very jarring, to hear your experience of it and how hard it was, because you've gone from this model and you can see how much it benefits the young people, to then get into a place where that has changed, and you could just see where it could go wrong so badly, because if someone's trying to desperately sound something out or try something or whatever, you know.
Or even
especially if
go on,
come out, you know, if they're going to come out, they're going to come to you, and the parents, it's not part of their view, whatever. But for that young person, being able to have that space and be able to say that, this could be really important for them, and explore that. And while I can understand the argument of well, as a parent I should know, but that young person also has a right to establish who they are and not be then subjected to whatever, you know.
Yeah. Especially if they're already in spiritual counselling, and then I went and talked to the school counsellor, or I went and talked to a counsellor wherever, and then having that conflict of messages received, information, well, I have a right to know what's going on in my child's life. Well, ask them then. Ask them. You don't need me as a random third party to tell you how to parent your child, right? That's not
right. That's what it's
our
about.
Place. No.
That's what it's about it all. So it's very important about that. So where limited shoulds and shouldn'ts, that's what I'm looking at. Shoulds and shouldn'ts. So you've got this DBT person, you've got this CBT person, you found them, that's what they're going to do. I know what I'm expecting now, so I've got a rough idea of what's going to happen. Also just point out though, if you see something that they do and you don't know what it is, please ask them. What does that mean? What does that look like? Please do. Get them to explain what it is, because then you might think, oh, I've never thought of that before. You know, because there's always these extra little bits that are coming out all the time of different styles and different variations of stuff. It's you know. Yeah.
And I think that's important in terms of also holding on to the fact that none of us, no matter what combination of magicry we're going to use, you are still the expert on you.
Correct.
We are not the expert on your life, no matter what modality someone's doing, whether they're a psychologist, psychiatrist, counsellor, therapist, whatever we want to call ourselves. You still know what is best for you. So we are only ever there as guides.
Right.
And if you ever feel like somebody is telling you what you should or should not be doing in your life, that's a red flag.
Yeah. Or they say they've got all the answers, because they're a goddamn liar. They're a goddamn liar.
If they do, we're out.
Goddamn liar. Yeah. Someone who's very sure about what all the answers, I'd be very worried if someone said they're really sure about it. But I do think, we've mentioned this in previous episodes, where most of them do have some of them do have an introduction bit, some of them charge for it, some of them don't, but I still think it's worth in that expectation is half an hour. Half an hour. It's not a full, this is where you spill everything, but it's just to get it, just as headlines. Get the headlines out of the way and just see how they respond. It's almost like kicking the tires if you're buying a new car, right? Yeah. You want to make sure, you want to sound them out and see if how they're going to react to this, how they're going to react to that. That's kind of how I would use that consultation. Because you're shopping for somebody who's going to help you. The same way you would shop for a dentist, or, someone to do your nails, someone to do your hair, whatever it is, you should be doing the same for somebody who's going to be working around in your emotions and feelings and things that have been quite quickly.
Yeah. You are shopping for a therapist, not the other way around. So we're not shopping for clients, right? Like, you have every right to say, okay, well, I spoke to this person, and 2 days later I spoke to somebody else, but I felt like that person got more of what I was talking about. It's okay. You're already vulnerable. You're already overwhelmed. You're already trying to deal with and navigate the system that we try to make it easy for you, but it's not. Even if you spend, I mean, when Rich and I were together recently, he came over to the US, we spent over an hour and a half on Psychology Today, just looking at people's profiles, and we're functioning adult well. On paper, we're functioning adult.
But even that was quite an interesting take of like the people that are offering therapy services over in the US as opposed to the UK. You had like qualified social workers, and what was like, it was social workers, clinicians, and what was there was like another one that was kicking around, like a registered something or other.
A life coach at the
life coaches. So, but all come under the guise of therapy, not like like over this side, you would not get a social worker on Psychology Today saying I do therapy. You just wouldn't. So that's kind of interesting seeing what like that change between the two countries, I think.
Yeah, because we have, master's level social workers, and then you have licensed professional social workers, which can actually diagnose and have that clinical clout to kind of get you medication and stuff like that. So I think, because like you said, as looking at a social worker, you can be completely horrified if they were offering therapy. Absolutely horrified. But I mean, it's a very different, and that's really important to make as well, is like, point to make. Counselors and therapists are the same thing, right? Like, but Americans like the term therapist, they use counsellor for other things, whereas in the UK, you're a therapist or psychotherapist or whatever, not a counsellor, or you're a counsellor and not a therapist, right? So it's like, it's all the same. We're all the same. Yeah. And when you're reading people's little spiel, like we said, Psychology Today now has those 30-second videos, which were awesome to watch. As somebody who's not looking for therapy, we're being very judgy, but like, both as a client and as a clinician, to look at those and think, it's interesting that they chose to mention that but didn't mention that. Like, and kind of just touching back on that shoulds and shouldn'ts, there should always be a contract that is established. There should be boundaries that are very clear. Expectations should be clear. How you pay for it should be upfront and clear. You should not be handing over money to a therapist in a session. I think that really muddies the waters about what the relationship is. You have a great set that how you do it. Can you explain a little bit about how you do it?
Yeah, because mine's all done through Power Diary, because it's always just, you put your availability on there, and then once I've done that, then the clients can create their thing, and then they can go on and book the free consultation without, you don't need a credit card for that. But to book an appointment, the payment's taken care of. So in order to confirm your appointment, payment's taken care of, done. So that way, by the time you turn up for your session, we can just focus on the session, and it's not me chasing for any payments or anything like that. And I think when I previously had therapy, and I used to have to, in the UK we haven't used checks for a long time, right? But I remember having to write a check for this. Don't judge me. I used to write a check. Used to write a check to pay for my therapy a long time ago, and I remember thinking, I'd obviously been like, get quite emotional when I tap into that, and it's just sort of like, I remember thinking and I paid for it at the end of the session as well. So I'm like, I just wanted to be in my emotions and feelings and come out. I didn't want to try and like compose myself to finish writing this thing. Go, oh, there you go, thank you very much. And then it almost felt a bit like I had to put my response on pause to deal with this, to then unpause it again and go back to where I was. It just felt a bit disjarring. So.
I think I had the same experience with the charity I would work for in the UK as well, and like they had a sliding scale, which is great. Most reputable therapists should have some sort of sliding scale, especially in these times. Therapy should not cost you your rent, right? No, therapy should not financially burden you. It should be something that you feel comfortable. It is an investment. It's self-care. There are charities, and we can put a link in our website. On our Instagram for charities in the UK where you can get free services such as the Samaritans, the Yellow Door, Life Changers, even the BACP, Mind, Citizens Advice Bureau, all of those kind of people that you can reach out to that are free services where you can get support. And we'll do the same for some American services as well, but everything's privatized over here. But having to take money, wrap up the end of a session, take this cash. We had a little key on our key fob that opened the cash tin. I mean, please, what decade is this? But like, you open the cash tin, you have to give them change. If you didn't have enough change, you had to go downstairs and get it from the guy in reception. It was all this palaver that you're absolutely right. You're wrapping up the end of the session. Somebody might have been in deep upset and chaos, and then you're like, oh, do you remember where that fiver is? And they're searching for it. They're still crying. Like, no.
It's a very, like,
like you said, jarring is a great word. It's such a jarring experience to be like, okay, time's up, and that'll be $25.
It's not to say that the person would be unsafe. It's not like going, they just was like, they took everything out of the box and said, off you go out the door. It's not that. It's like, because even when you put everything back in the box and you're functioning, you still got the residual bit where sometimes you just want to sit in there for a little bit and just have a moment and just, because you've worked hard to dig them fucking emotions out, right?
Yeah.
To dig it. And, for me, them scenarios were a bit jarring. I mean, I'm sure there's still old school counsellors who get it in cash or do whatever, and I'm sure that's fine. But for me, I just don't.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that was kind of a step into what kind of, there's so much going on. There's there's even the online services, mental health, cerebral, all of this stuff that's getting kind of flooding our algorithms, right, on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and all that sort of stuff. My strongest advice is do your research, right? Look into the person. If they have a personal website, go and look at it and put their name into Google. Look at the reviews of the people that they've been experienced, like people that have experienced their service. If you're really nervous about it, go through one of the governing bodies, the ACP, over here, Psychology Today. Those people have been vetted within an inch of their life, right? They've had to put up all they've had to have professional reviews, everything. So these people are very well done. However, they also come with a price tag, right? Some of them are. But then again, some of the charities in the UK are run by very good people that want to help as well. So do your research. Have confidence in your shopping capacity, right? That you don't have to, you can try it before you buy it, right? You don't have to take the first guy that rolls up and you think, oh God, I'm stuck with him. Unfortunately, in the charities, you might be, but you still have the capacity to step in or step out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I know some people, you've waited for 6 months and you finally get to see a counsellor and you absolutely can't stand them. Like, it's okay to say this one isn't for me. If you've waited that long, wait a couple of more weeks for somebody that's going to fit for you. Don't lump it. We're British people, and now being like half American, like I'm less bothered of it. But like British people, we lump it, don't we? We just go along with it, and we're like, oh, it'll be all right. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to say thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah,
Americans would have sued the place or set it on fire, but you know what I mean? Like it is what it is. It is what it is.
So what we're saying is, shop like an American. When you're shopping for this, shop like a goddamn American.
Know what you want, take no prisoners, you do, and get on it.
Yeah, sound advice. So, thanks for listening, and we'll drop all the links, as many as we can find, in the things below. All right, have a good, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, ta-ta.
Bye. Alright, that's uploading.